Development is one of the most important principles in chess. And to illustrate why, I'm going to show you a quick example where black doesn't play any developing moves at all. So e4, and you can see with this e4, these two pieces which had no squares to go suddenly have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares. And this queen has 1, 2, 3, 4 squares. So with this one move, also not that important, but the king also has an escape square. But with this one move, in one stroke, these two pieces went from 0 squares to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to controlling 8 squares on the board. So let's say black plays a5. So bishop c4, here a4, black still doesn't develop, queen h5, and here after b6 we have the typical mate on f7. Normally you wouldn't develop the queen so early, but the point I'm trying to make here is that these two pieces reinforce each other, they make each other stronger, and combined with this weak f7 square, that's what made it possible to deliver the checkmate. So this is a very simple example, but also in many games you will see that the more active pieces combine with each other to exploit some kind of weakness and therefore deliver mate or win material or something. Okay, let's take a look at another example. So e4, e5, and here we have the Philidor, d4. I'm going to play the first few moves a little bit faster. So knight c3. So as you can see, white keeps on developing his pieces. He has these two knights developed. Black has one knight developed. Bishop e7, bishop f4. So currently we have 3 pieces developed versus 2. Well, actually you also should count these bishops, since they are developed as well. They can go, they can move on these respective diagonals. So actually you could say it's 4 pieces developed versus 3 pieces developed, and both sides, well, black is 1 step closer to castling, but white's going to castle long, so that's 2 moves in which white can castle. So black castles, queen d2, and here let's say black plays c5, then we play knight b5. Here again an example of 4 developed pieces, 3 of which attack this pawn. So those are 3 attackers versus 2 defenders. And even if black could bring in 1 more defender, and he can, we can, with true long castle, we can bring in 1 more defender, that's the rook. So let's say knight e8, castles long. And notice that as for our development, we have all these pieces developed, only this rook is out of the game. As for black, you can see that these 2 pieces aren't playing at the moment, and all these pieces are on the back rank. So what you normally want is at some point to move your pieces forward into the enemy territory. So here we can, with long castle, we brought in another attacker. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 attackers, and that's just 3 defenders. And black can't bring in any more defenders. So let's say bishop e6 takes, and after all the trades, one thing you also need to realize is that we did win a pawn, but also in the end this resulted in this rook coming to a really active square in the enemy camp. For example, rook d8 is prevented through because we can take the rook. And let's say for some reason black wanted to play f5. Well, now he can't since we can take the bishop. So development advantage can also lead to other kinds of advantages. So here you might have thought, well, we're going to castle long, maybe white will go and checkmate black with a pawn storm on the king side, and that's certainly one possibility. But here, because this pawn is so poorly defended, we can just win it, and we are converting our development advantage into a material advantage and into just a better, more active position. So let's show another example from the Royal Lopez. So I'm going to quickly go over the first move until we come to the position of interest. So both sides develop pretty normally. Black also is doing a decent job to develop all of his pieces. Here he gives a check, we play knight c3, castles, and here well, what I want you to take note of is that these bishops are on really active diagonals. This knight can jump in, and we are basically combining our development, and especially since our pieces can jump into the queen side much quicker and more efficient, while black's defenders are really on the wrong side of the board, and these two pieces aren't developed yet. So as for us, our pieces are all doing a pretty good job. Only this rook isn't developed yet, and we're not castled yet. But here we have a tactical advantage. So what we still have to do here is chase away this important defender on f6 to weaken the h7 square further. So this is a natural defender of the square h7. And with the move e5, we push the knight away to a worse square, also away from the king side. And when the knight moves, this square will be weaker. Also with e5 we are freeing this diagonal for the bishop. So e5, and let's say knight g4, then we have h3, and this knight is trapped here. Well, it can go to h6, but we can use similar stuff. So let's say it goes to d5, then we combine our developed pieces, and black does have some pieces developed, but they are on the wrong side of the board, which means we can do the typical Greek gift sacrifice, and you can see that all of these pieces team up, and together they are developed and they are stronger than the defense on the king side. And right now there isn't much defense on the king side for black. So after king takes h7, knight g5, king g8 and queen h5, black has nothing better than to give up the queen with queen takes g5. And after bishop takes g5, white should probably win this game. So I want to compare this with the position at the beginning, where we had just two pieces in the attack, but here in this game with the Royal Lopez, we have several pieces combining to attack the opponent, also with some help from our pawn. So here you see instead of just the queen and the bishop, we have some help from a few other pieces as well. So this bishop sacrifices itself so that the knight can jump in, supported by this bishop, and after queen h5, threatening mate on h7, and there's really nothing black can do about it except to give up the queen, after which we can take it back with bishop g5. But here we combined really, we developed and we combined several pieces, and it's the same principle. We developed and we use our pieces in an active way to exploit some kind of weakness. In this case it was a weak king and a weak pawn on h7. In the example with here, it was the weak pawn on d6. And what you will often notice when you are better developed than your opponent is that the power of your pieces combined will be greater than the defensive powers of the opponent. And that means maybe you can win a pawn, maybe you can win a piece, maybe you can checkmate the opponent. Like here we won a pawn and we are, I think, probably in a winning endgame. Yeah. So that's the beauty of development. Probably you have heard the saying, knights before bishops. First bring out your minor pieces, castle, move your queen aside to connect her rooks. So why is that? Well, at the moment this poor knight only has 2 squares to go, so it's not so happy. Once you move it, for example, to f3, it has 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares, of 2 of which are central squares, so that's a very happy knight. And let's say knight c6. So probably you're going to move one of your central pawns, and by doing so, since bishops are long-range pieces, they are kind of automatically developed anyway. So by moving your knights first, you are bringing them from a pretty bad position to a good position, where they also can support the center and jump into the game. So I'm not telling you these are the best moves for either side, but just to illustrate, this bishop could come out, for example, to c4 to clear the room for whites to castle. So knight f6, this developing and attacking this pawn. So let's say d3, also developing this bishop, e5, so we castle. And here it's important also to take a look at what black is doing, what black's plans and ideas are. For example, here's maybe threatening to jump into d4. That's why here c3. Let's say bishop e7. And here black has connected the rooks. So basically what has happened is that these minor pieces, they are, well, more or less, I'd say, in the way. They're in the way of castling, and they're in the way of clearing this back rank for the rooks to move. These rooks, they would like to go on some open or half open files where, well, there aren't any at the moment, but let's say with d5 or d4 by white, these files could open at some moment. And that's what you really want to do. You want to make room for your other pieces. So with the queen moving here, the queen made room for the rooks to move around. And for us, it can be the same way. So we could play queen e2. Not saying it's the very best move, but here it's the same principle. So let's move back a while. So here you see we developed this knight. And we brought the bishop out so it was possible to castle. Here knight c3 would have been perfectly fine as well, I think. Let's see, yeah, knight c3, but c3 is also okay. So d4 castles, and now we are bringing our pieces to clear this back rank, so the rooks can move around more freely. And from this point on, this is what's typically known as the middle game. So so let's say queen d7. So here both players have all of the pieces out and can now try to gain an advantage during the middle game phase. Okay, that was another video in our Overexplained series about development. If you liked it, please like the video, subscribe to the channel or leave a comment, and I will see you maybe in one of the next videos.